I am a 32-year-old software engineer who moved in with my sister Lisa after our parents passed away. She asked if her three best friends, Jessica, Amanda, and Tara, could join us too. It seemed perfect at first, since I owned the house and could help everyone financially. But then came the girls' nights that happened more and more often. Soon I found myself becoming a stranger in my own home, constantly pushed aside for girls-only activities. Before I tell you how I went from family provider to complete stranger overnight, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt excluded by people you trusted. My life changed dramatically 3 years ago, when my parents died in a tragic car accident. It was the most devastating moment I had ever experienced, but along with the grief came unexpected responsibilities. I inherited our family home, a comfortable 4-bedroom house in the Portland suburbs. At the time, it felt too big and empty for just me, its rooms filled with memories but no voices. I had always been close with my younger sister Lisa, who was 26, and had recently graduated with a degree in marketing. She was struggling to find stable employment and was drowning in student debt. When I suggested she move in with me, it seemed like the perfect solution. She would have a place to stay rent-free while getting on her feet, and I would have company in that too-quiet house. My career as a software engineer was going well. I had been with the same tech company for 8 years and had worked my way up to senior developer. The salary was excellent, allowing me to maintain the house and still put money away in savings each month. I had always been the responsible one, even when our parents were alive, and providing for Lisa felt natural. The dynamic in the house changed about 6 months after Lisa moved in. She approached me one evening while I was coding in the living room. "Neil, I have a huge favor to ask," she said, perching on the arm of the sofa. "My friend Amanda just went through a horrible breakup. Her boyfriend kicked her out and she has nowhere to go. I barely knew Amanda, having met her only a few times at Lisa's graduation party. She seemed nice enough, if a bit loud. She would contribute to rent and utilities," Lisa continued. "It would just be until she finds her own place. 3 months tops." I agreed, partly because I wanted to help and partly because additional rent money would be useful for the property taxes coming up. Amanda moved in the following weekend, bringing with her an astounding amount of clothing and makeup for what was supposed to be a temporary stay. Within 2 months, the house population doubled again. First came Jessica, a pharmaceutical sales rep who was between apartments because her lease ended before her new place was ready. Then came Tara, a graphic designer who had some vague issue with her landlord that required immediate relocation. Both times Lisa assured me it was temporary, and both times I agreed because, well, why not? The house had the space, and more rent contributions seemed like a good idea. The first few weeks with all 5 of us were actually pleasant. We had group dinners where everyone pitched in, cooking or cleaning up. We watched movies together on weekends. I even enjoyed having more people around, as it made the house feel alive in a way it had not since my parents died. To give everyone more space, I renovated the basement into a comfortable office and living area for myself. I added a small kitchenette, a full bathroom, and set up my workstation down there. It was a significant investment, but it gave the women more room upstairs and provided me with a quiet space to work from home when needed. Looking back, moving to the basement was the beginning of my slow exile. With me, predominantly downstairs, the women took over the main living areas. The kitchen became their gathering spot in the mornings. The living room transformed into their evening social center. Family photos were gradually replaced with selfies of the 4 of them at brunches and wine tastings. The first official girls' night happened about a month after everyone had moved in. Lisa informed me that the living room would be occupied that evening. "We are having a girls' night," she explained. "Just the 4 of us, some wine face masks and rom-coms. You would be bored anyway." I respected their space and spent the evening in my basement working on a side project. One girls' night became a weekly tradition, which seemed reasonable enough, but then it increased to twice weekly, then 3 times. Soon there were post-it notes appearing on doors throughout the house labeled "Girls Only." First the bathroom during prime morning hours, then the kitchen on weeknights, and finally the living room most evenings and weekends. I started noticing how conversations would stop when I entered rooms. Laughter would die down, replaced with what felt like obligatory acknowledgement of my presence before I would inevitably feel so uncomfortable that I would retreat back downstairs. It was around this time that I began to really examine the financial situation of the household. Despite having 4 adults living upstairs, I was still covering about 80% of the household expenses. The rent contributions I collected were minimal, nowhere near market rate for the area. I paid all the utilities without question. Groceries magically appeared in the refrigerator purchased on my credit card. When the washing machine broke down, I bought a new one, without even discussing splitting the cost. This financial imbalance might have been tolerable if I had felt like a valued member of the household. But increasingly it seemed like I was simply the wallet that kept the lights on and the water running. I tried bringing up the idea of a fairer financial arrangement during one of the rare dinners when everyone was present. I was thinking we should revisit how we handle expenses around here. I began carefully. Maybe create a more structured system for splitting costs. Jessica barely looked up from her phone. I already give Lisa money every month. We all chip in, Amanda agreed, though I had only received one payment from her in the past 3 months. Lisa patted my hand condescendingly. Neil, we are family, and family helps family. You make more than all of us combined. What she failed to mention was that, while I did earn a good salary, all of these women had decent jobs themselves. Jessica made excellent money in pharmaceutical sales. Amanda worked as an event coordinator for a major hotel chain. Tara freelanced as a graphic designer for several well-known brands. And Lisa had finally landed a marketing position at a local agency. Their money went to weekend getaways. I was never invited to join clothing hauls that took over the upstairs hallway, and food delivery I never saw, but found charges for on the credit card statement. Meanwhile, I covered mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, utilities, and most of the groceries. The exclusion that had begun subtly now became blatant and complete. Over the course of just a few weeks, the living room underwent a transformation. My leather couch, a housewarming gift I had bought myself when I first moved in, was replaced with a pink sectional I had never seen before. The coffee table my father had built was relegated to the garage, replaced by something glass and gold. Family photos disappeared entirely, and the walls were now adorned with inspirational quotes about female friendship and empowerment. When I asked Lisa about these changes, she shrugged. We took a vote and decided the living room needed a feminine touch. It is our main gathering space, after all. But I live here too, I pointed out, and that was Dad's coffee table. You are hardly ever up here anymore, she countered. And that old table did not match the new aesthetic. The kitchen was the next battleground. A schedule appeared on the refrigerator door, blocking out prime dinner hours as reserved for the women. My designated cooking time was between 10 p.m. and midnight after they had finished their socializing. When I pointed out how ridiculous this was, Amanda explained that they needed the kitchen during normal hours because they all had busy social lives and complex dietary needs. The most frustrating part was watching their boyfriends and male friends come over during these supposedly girls-only times. Apparently, the restriction only applied to me. I would hear deep, male voices laughing upstairs while I worked in my basement, excluded from my own home. One evening, I came upstairs to grab a glass of water during what was apparently a sacred girls-only cocktail hour. Jessica immediately confronted me. Neil, we are having female bonding time, she said, gesturing to the living room where Tara was mixing drinks for a man I had never seen before. Could you please respect our space? There is literally a guy sitting on the couch right now, I pointed out. That is different. That is Tara's friend, Marcus. He understands female energy. When I continued to the kitchen, anyway, Lisa followed me. Why are you being so difficult? Is it so hard to give us a little space? This is my house, I reminded her quietly. I pay the mortgage. There you go. Throwing that in my face again, she snapped. Just because you make more money does not mean you get to dominate the common areas. This is about respecting female space and energy. Your male fragility is showing, Neil. As the weeks passed, I found myself increasingly confined to my basement, only emerging late at night when the house was quiet to grab food or do laundry. I felt like a ghost in my own home, an unwelcome presence, tolerated only because of the financial stability I provided. The situation reached its breaking point as my 32nd birthday approached. I had taken a rare Friday off work, planning to grill some steaks and maybe have a small celebration. That morning I went to the specialty butcher across town and splurged on premium ribeyes. When I returned home, I found the house transformed with balloons, streamers, and a large banner. For a moment, I thought they had remembered my birthday. Then I read the banner. "Congratulations on your promotion, Tara." A post-it note on the front door read, "Girls Only Celebration. Please use garage entrance." I stood there, premium steaks in hand, completely forgotten on my own birthday. I entered through the garage as instructed and went down to my basement, hearing the preparations for the party continuing upstairs. The celebration lasted the entire weekend, with people coming and going at all hours. Not once did anyone mention my birthday or even check if the noise was bothering me. On Sunday night, after the last guest had left, I finally emerged to clean up the mess they had left behind. While gathering empty bottles and food containers, I found a receipt for party supplies. It was charged to my credit card, nearly $400 spent without my knowledge or consent. That night I could not sleep. I lay awake listening to the quiet house and realizing just how completely I had been taken advantage of. Curiosity and a growing sense of betrayal led me to my computer, where I began reviewing our household finances in detail. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 6 months, I had spent more than $22,000 on household expenses. The combined contribution from all 4 women was less than $3,000. I had funded girls-only activities that explicitly excluded me. I had paid for groceries that disappeared before I could eat them. I had covered utilities for 4 additional adults, who treated me like an unwanted roommate rather than family or even a friend. Worse than the financial betrayal was discovering their social media posts. In a moment of suspicion, I searched Lisa's public Instagram and found numerous posts referring to me as their ATM guy or the basement troll. There were videos of them laughing in my kitchen, mocking how easy it was to get me to pay for things. The most painful was a post from Lisa, where she told her friends they were training Neil to stay out of their way while still covering all the bills. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling something break inside me. This was my sister, the person I had supported and cared for after our parents died. These were people living in my home, eating food I paid for, enjoying the comfortable life I provided. And they saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited and mocked. Sleep eluded me that night as I contemplated my options. I could continue as things were a ghost in my own home, financially supporting people who held me in contempt. I could ask them all to leave immediately, though that would mean essentially making my sister homeless. Or I could try a third approach, one that would require courage and resolve I was not sure I possessed. The next morning, I called a close friend who happened to be an attorney. I confirmed that legally I was on solid ground. The house was solely in my name. I had no formal rental agreements with any of them. I had rights that I had been neglecting in favor of avoiding conflict. Over the next few days, I methodically documented everything. I created spreadsheets of all household expenses and contributions. I saved screenshots of their social media mockery. I researched fair market rental values for the area. I opened new bank accounts and transferred my money. I canceled the additional credit cards I had provided, and I prepared myself mentally for what would likely be an explosive confrontation. I chose my moment carefully, taking another day off work when I knew everyone would be home in the evening, at precisely 6 p.m. I climbed the stairs from my basement, ignored the girls-only sign on the living room door, and entered what had once been my favorite room in the house. All 4 women were there, lounging on the pink sectional, scrolling through their phones. They looked up in surprise as I entered, Lisa frowning at my uninvited presence. "We need to have a house meeting," I said calmly, setting my laptop on the coffee table. "Right now. We are kind of in the middle of planning our weekend," Amanda began, but I cut her off with a raised hand. "This will only take a few minutes of your time, and it concerns all of you." I kept my voice level, professional, as if I were conducting a business meeting rather than confronting the people who had been taking advantage of me for months. I opened my laptop and turned it to face them. On the screen was a detailed spreadsheet of household expenses. For the past 6 months, I have covered 87% of all costs associated with this house, I began. That includes the mortgage, utilities, groceries, household supplies, and repairs. The 4 of you together have contributed less than 13% despite occupying 4/5 of the living space. Their expressions ranged from boredom to annoyance, but none seemed particularly concerned. This was old news to them after all. They had grown accustomed to my financial support. I have also become aware of how you all refer to me when I am not around. I clicked to the next slide, which displayed screenshots of their social media posts. Lisa at least had the decency to look embarrassed when she saw her own words about training me to stay out of their way. Based on all this, I have decided to implement a new household financial policy effective immediately. Now I had their full attention. Jessica sat up straight, narrowing her eyes. "What does that mean?" she demanded. "It means that from now on, expenses will be split proportionally. I have calculated fair market rent for this neighborhood, which comes to $1,200 per room per month. Each of you will be responsible for your share due on the first of the month." The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. Utilities will be divided equally 5 ways. Groceries will no longer be on my credit card. If something in the house needs repair, we will hire a professional and split the cost. "You cannot be serious," Amanda sputtered. "We cannot afford that kind of rent. Actually, based on your incomes, you can. You all have well-paying jobs. You simply choose to spend your money on other things, because I have been covering your basic living expenses." Lisa stood up, tears forming in her eyes. "Neil, I am your sister. You would really charge me rent." After everything we have been through, I had anticipated this appeal to family loyalty. "Yes, Lisa, I would. The same way you had no problem excluding me from my own home and mocking me to your friends." "This is so typical male behavior," Tara interjected coldly. "Throwing around financial power the moment you do not get your way." "This is not about power," I replied evenly. "This is about respect and fairness, 2 things that have been notably absent in this house for some time now. You have 30 days to either agree to the new terms or find alternative housing." I closed my laptop and stood up. "I suggest you take some time to consider your options. The new lease agreements are printed and on the kitchen counter if you decide to stay." Amanda's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You cannot just change everything overnight. We have rights." "Actually, I can. I have consulted with an attorney. As the sole owner of this property, with no formal rental agreements in place, I am well within my rights to establish new terms." As I turned to leave, Jessica tried a different approach. "Neil, wait. I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Maybe we could discuss this over dinner. I could cook your favorite pasta." The transparent attempt at manipulation only strengthened my resolve. "The terms are non-negotiable. 30 days. I returned to my basement, changed the Wi-Fi password as a precaution, and waited. The house above me erupted into chaos. I could hear raised voices, crying, doors slamming. My phone buzzed continuously with texts from Lisa, alternating between tearful pleas and angry accusations. By morning, a remarkable transformation had occurred. The girls' only signs had vanished overnight. When I emerged from my basement to leave for work, Lisa was in the kitchen cooking breakfast. "I made your favorite blueberry pancakes," she said with forced brightness. "And there is fresh coffee." I politely declined pouring coffee into my travel mug. "Thanks, but I am running late." Throughout that day, I received invitations from each woman. Amanda suggested a movie night with just the 2 of us. Jessica offered to show me her new wine collection. Tara proposed collaborating on a home improvement project for the backyard. Lisa sent hourly texts checking how my day was going and if I wanted anything special for dinner. The girls' only fortress had crumbled in the face of financial reality. Suddenly they were desperate for my company, my approval, my continued support. The transparent nature of their switch from exclusion to forced inclusion was almost sad to witness. That evening, I returned home to find all 4 women in the kitchen preparing what smelled like an elaborate meal. The pink sectional had mysteriously disappeared, replaced by my leather couch. The family photos had returned to the walls. Even my father's coffee table had been retrieved from the garage and restored to its place of honor. "We thought we could have a nice family dinner," Lisa explained, her smile strained. "Just like we used to." I agreed to join them, curious to see how far this performance would go. Throughout dinner they were attentive, laughing at my mildest jokes, asking about my work, complimenting my recent haircut. Not once did anyone check their phone or exchange knowing glances. It was a masterclass in insincerity performed by women who had been mocking me behind my back just days earlier. After dinner, Lisa asked if we could talk privately. In my former bedroom, now her room, she broke down in tears. "You cannot really expect me to pay that much rent," she sobbed. "I am your sister. Mom and Dad would be horrified that you are treating me this way. Mom and Dad would be horrified by how you and your friends have treated me in their home." I corrected her gently. "This is not about money, Lisa. This is about respect. We respect you. We love having you around." The social media posts and the girls' only signs suggest otherwise. She wiped her eyes, switching tactics. "The others are the problem, not me. I am your blood. We could kick them out and go back to how it was just the two of us. That is an option I conceded. But you would still need to contribute fairly to household expenses. I am not backing down on that point." Lisa stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. The brother who had always given in, always provided without question, always retreated to avoid conflict, was gone. In his place stood someone with boundaries and expectations. Someone who valued himself enough to demand respect. "I will think about it," she finally said, her voice small. Over the next week, the household dynamic shifted dramatically. Tara was the first to leave, packing her things efficiently and departing without drama. She had already secured an apartment across town, proving to be the most pragmatic of the group. Jessica took a different approach, suddenly appearing in more revealing clothing around the house, finding reasons to touch my arm during conversations, suggesting late-night movies, just the two of us. When her attempts at flirtation failed to sway my position on the rent, she too began packing. Amanda was less dignified in her exit. The night before she left, she put her fist through my basement door in a fit of rage, screaming that I was a selfish monster who had lured them into a false sense of security before pulling the rug out. I calmly informed her that the damage would be deducted from her security deposit, which only increased her fury. Throughout all of this, Lisa wavered. One day she would be filling out rental applications, the next she would be trying to negotiate a special sister rate. She was torn between loyalty to her friends and the reality that her brother was her most stable support system. In the end, she chose to stay. We signed a formal rental agreement with a fair rent that acknowledged our family relationship while still respecting my position as homeowner. She began contributing to utilities and buying her own groceries. The dynamic between us was strained at first, but gradually evolved into something new and in many ways healthier than before. The months following what I came to think of as the household revolution were a time of healing and self-discovery. With the house suddenly quieter and my financial burden significantly lightened, I had space to process the emotions of the past year. I found myself dealing with complicated feelings of betrayal, particularly from Lisa. She had been my closest family, and discovering her participation in the mockery and exclusion cut deeply. On her recommendation, I started seeing a therapist who helped me understand my tendency to buy affection and avoid conflict patterns that had made me vulnerable to exploitation. My therapist helped me see that my desire to provide for Lisa after our parents died was natural and loving, but I had extended that generosity without establishing healthy boundaries. I had conflated being needed financially with being valued personally, a distinction that had allowed the situation to deteriorate so dramatically. As the emotional wounds began to heal, I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my basement exile. I joined a hiking group, started playing basketball again on weekends, and even cautiously dipped my toe into the dating pool. Each new connection helped restore my confidence and reinforce that I deserved to be treated with respect. My relationship with Lisa evolved slowly but steadily. The first few weeks after her friends left were awkward, with her alternating between resentment and exaggerated gratitude. But as we established new routines and expectations, something interesting happened. We began to relate to each other as adults rather than as provider and dependent. She started coming to me for career advice rather than financial bailouts. I found myself impressed by her growing professionalism and work ethic. We instituted a weekly dinner where we would cook together and catch up, a tradition that gradually rebuilt our bond on a foundation of mutual respect rather than obligation. To help erase the painful memories, we renovated the house together. The upstairs returned to a space that reflected both our tastes. The basement remained my domain, but I spent less time hiding there and more time enjoying the common areas of my home. About a year after the confrontation, I had an unexpected encounter at the grocery store. Amanda was in the produce section examining avocados with intense concentration. When she looked up and saw me, her initial expression was one of alarm, quickly replaced by resignation. "Neil," she acknowledged with a nod. "You look well." "So do you," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. She seemed more grounded somehow, less artificial than I remembered. After an awkward pause, she sighed. "I have been meaning to reach out. I wanted to apologize for how things went down, and for your door. I appreciate that," I said, genuinely touched by this unexpected olive branch. "It was a weird dynamic in that house," she continued absently, turning an avocado in her hand. "We all kind of fed off each other, seeing who could be more extreme about the whole girls-only thing. It became this game, and we lost sight of the fact that we were being cruel to a real person, to you." What happened to Jessica and Tara? I found myself curious about the women who had so thoroughly dominated my home and life. Jessica moved to Chicago for a job. Tara is still around. We do not really talk much anymore. That friendship was more situational than substantial, I guess. We chatted for a few more minutes about her new apartment and job before parting ways amicably. It was not a reconciliation exactly, but it provided a kind of closure I had not realized I needed. Back at home, Lisa and I were settling into our new normal. She had proven herself to be a responsible tenant and a much better sister than before. She had started dating a kind, stable guy who treated me with genuine respect when he visited. The house felt like home again. I, too, had found someone special, a woman I met through my hiking group who valued independence and clear communication. When I eventually told her the story of my year as an ATM in my own home, she was appalled on my behalf, but also pointed out that I had shown remarkable restraint and maturity in how I handled the situation. Looking back on that difficult time, I realize now that the experience taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and the difference between generosity and martyrdom. I learned that real support sometimes means establishing firm limits. I discovered that helping can slide into enabling without careful attention. And most importantly, I found that I was stronger than I knew when it came to standing up for myself. If you have ever found yourself being taken advantage of by people you care about, remember that establishing boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. It takes courage to break unhealthy patterns, but the freedom and self-respect on the other side are worth it. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family or friends? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life lessons learned the hard way. And do not forget to share with anyone who might be struggling to set healthy boundaries in their relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, generosity should never come at the cost of your dignity.